you for the warm welcome and the opportunity to be here in ministry with you today. Some of you may remember that this is not our first gig together, and that in fact, after 20 years of ordained priesthood, yes, it has been 20, I can reflect back and thank you, St. Margaret's Episcopal Church, for having formed me so well for engaging the tasks of ministry and loving God's people. And in fact, I bring evidence of our time together. When I finished my 2 years of field education with St. Margaret's, you all gave me this wonderful stained glass piece. I thank my God in all my remembrance of you. And I have remembered you to this day. I like when I work with congregations that are in transition, and that's us folks, to use this prayer from the Book of Common Prayer. It's one that will probably be familiar to you. It is the prayer of self-dedication. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, so draw our hearts to you, so guide our minds, so fill our imaginations, so control our wills, that we may be wholly yours, utterly dedicated unto you, and then use us, we pray, as you would, and always to the glory and the welfare of your people, through our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Amen. So we decided to go low tech on this morning, so we're not doing PowerPoint presentations and stuff like that. But I did provide you with a PowerPoint because I know there are some people like me who like to refer to things later. But I ask you to treat it not like a Bible, but as a guide. So some of the information in the presentation may change based on what we discover with one another. So I really want this time this morning to be, as Jill said, talking about the priest process, but I also think that it's a wonderful time for me to get caught up with you and where you are, because you've come through some really challenging territory. Saying goodbye to a departing rector, calling a new priest in charge, then after a relatively short time, not having that priest in charge in place anymore, but you've also done some really good self-study as a congregation, and you have that information. So you've done really important work that now I come and join you in, and I want us to kind of get in sync with one another. So if it's okay with you, we're going to work together a little bit first before I tell you about the priest process. Is that good with everybody?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Can you really hear me without this microphone?
Sure.
No, I mean not the people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna handheld. Okay, lovely. I'll try not to get carried away. Something about when a clergy person holds a mic, suddenly you want to preach. Uh-oh. I love using this diagram with people because I think it just makes so much sense. When your priest decides it is time for them to depart, 3 things happen simultaneously. 3 things start simultaneously. You start a process of ending, losing, and letting go. So you've done some goodbyes. You've become aware of some things you've lost, whether it's that priest or perhaps a feeling you had at that time or programs that you've had to temporarily put down because you didn't have the capacity to do them. All kinds of things that we have to let go of when some event happens, in this case, losing your priest. At the very same time, another process starts, and we like to call it the neutral zone. Are you familiar with that term?
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Ah, yes, used a little differently in the neutral zone in Star Trek, I think. This neutral zone, what we mean is we have, at the same time that we're losing something and letting go, we're also entering a space where we're kind of untethered from our old perspective of how things were. And there are some feelings associated with being untethered that can be very uncomfortable or disruptive. But if we push through those, and if we live with those feelings, and if we live with one another and stick with one another, we enter the good things about that neutral zone place, where we can think about, well, we know who we are, but how can we be different in this time? New possibilities appear of how we can be, what we might do, how we can think about things. We might try things that we hadn't thought to try before, or we had thought to try them, but maybe the way we were didn't work with those new ways. So neutral zone, even though it can be uncomfortable and disruptive, it also leads to the new beginning. New beginning with a clergy person, but also, I think perhaps some new beginning that's already begun. I detected, as I was present in worship this morning, a spirit of positivity, a spirit of optimism, a spirit of Easter glory, the willingness to praise and to be happy with one another. Amen. And those are all good indicators of a new beginning having already started, and your new priest isn't even here yet. The other reason why I really like this diagram as an example of managing change, or a model for managing change, is the, what I want to say about that, the degree to which these things are happening at any one time. So all three of these processes start at the same time, but at the beginning, we're very much in touch with the ending and letting go feelings, right? They do recede, but often they don't entirely go away. And sometimes I've heard congregations kind of blame themselves, like years later, somebody will say, oh, I wish we still had that program. And somebody kind of wants to shut it down, and don't look back. But instead, we can hold on to the memories. That's all right. It was me. I thought it was me. I was letting go.
It's a chance for a new beginning.
It is a chance for a new beginning, and Greg came to save the day for the new beginning. Golly, I love you all. You're great. Maybe we should just put the sheets on the...
Put it up against the wall.
Here, I'll just hold it. I'm good. So let's use this as an example here. Should we just put the sheets up on the wall? It's probably easier. Okay, let me not draw. We have just entered the neutral zone. We feel a little...
Greg.
We feel a little discombobulated because what we were doing isn't working anymore. Yeah, so what we'll do, Greg, if you don't mind, I'll put the pad on the table there, and I'll separate the sheets, and I'll kind of talk while I'm separating. Okay. There we go.
Go to plan B.
Thank you so much, my friend.
Always another plan.
Challenging but not impossible.
Thank you. We'll do this one next. Maybe right underneath the...
Put it at you.
Is that okay? All right. And we'll leave the last one for last. Okay. No. So great example, thank you, of neutral zone. What did we find out? When I let go of the reality that my easel stand wasn't going to work, others came to help. We found a wall. Somebody had been super prepared and provided me with painter's tape before the presentation began. Right? We look around at the resources we do have and we match them to the moment. You've heard of asset mapping. Asset mapping is another thing that happens during the neutral zone time. We lose something, we look around to see what we have that can match the need at hand. We become creative. We feel affectionate toward one another because others have come to help. You see how it works. And in that, we find a new beginning. So where do you all feel you might be as a congregation right now, as you think about these three phases, knowing that these three phases happen or start at the same time and they're all continuing to happen at the same time? Where do you personally, let me put it that way, where do you personally feel most rooted? Ending, losing, neutral zone, new beginning. You don't have to speak for the church, you can speak for yourself. John Richard.
I personally feel that we're in new beginnings.
You feel you're in new beginnings, great.
I feel off balance, but I don't know where that is in there. I don't know if that's neutral or losing. It's because of COVID too. It's a really
Oh my
complicated
heavens.
Lord.
That is such a wonderful realization. COVID is another one of these big events that happens that starts some kind of transition. So I loved what you shared also in the sense that I feel a little off balance, but I also feel like I'm in new beginnings. And you'll notice that I've accentuated the curve of this neutral zone because my own experience in transition is often before the kind of icky feelings of neutral zone recede, there's a little bump up. It's almost like it gets worse before it gets better. Can anybody relate to that? Right. And so this off balance, this sort of teetering, is what I relate to there. Yes.
I think for me, I'm in the neutral zone, but with the optimistic outlook that we're going to be a new beginning. And a lot of that has to do with who's still here.
Brilliant.
And how the new vestry is working hard to maintain that kind of positivity and the outlook that we are a family, we're going to get through this. Many of us have been through way more than just right here.
Right.
Personally, family, church, but I think, I pretty much feel that we're moving out, or at least we're out of that ending. And I believe that these good folks, so we're pulling together here as we have done in the past.
Yes.
To move in that direction.
One of the things that I really appreciate about what you just shared is organizations and churches do have muscle memory. If we have been through transitions before, we pull on those same muscles for strength when we do the next kind of transition. And so you all have a fabulous asset there that we want to lay claim to. Good. So hopefulness because of the new beginning that is already at hand and the leadership of your vestry. Round of applause for your vestry for having that kind of impact. Also, we can feel optimistic because of the glue of the relationships you have with one another. Good. Now, one of the things, this may not pertain to you, but it pertains to other congregations, so I'll just name it, is COVID and some of the polarizations that happened or were accentuated during the 2+ years of COVID caused some fracture in relationships. Fracture that is still, people are trying to figure out what's fractured, where are the fractured relationships, what can I do to mend them, can I mend them? People are in that process. That's also a neutral zone activity. So you can think about whether that applies to you as St. Margaret's, and if it does, be blessed with that understanding that that's another kind of issue that you can identify during this neutral zone period. Always thinking about relationships, which I'll say something more about in a few minutes. Anyone else want to share where you are? Yes, Elena.
I would like to share as a prior congregant, now being on vestry, that there was a lot of uncertainty. I think we still have some uncertainty in our church about where we're going, what are our next steps. And I know the vestry has made a commitment to be upfront and share anything that we're doing on vestry. I think that's a good start. But I still feel there is some uncertainty by people in this congregation, and it's okay. I mean, I think if we can name it,
Yes.
you know, there is a little fear and anxiety within our congregation for Reverend Fanny leaving as quickly as she did, and that we're able to handle it as we move forward. We've been blessed with some great supply priests. Reverend Hughes and Reverend Henson are perfect people for us right now, and God brought those people.
Yes.
And Tara's help, our administrative assistant, has done just an incredible job along those lines. But, you know, for anyone that's in here, name it. I think this is our time to say, what is it that we're fearing? What is it that we're feeling uncertain about? We want you guys to feel that this is an open environment for you to speak your truth.
Good.
So is there anyone else that feels the same way?
Oh, yeah.
I would
when
add to
saw-
that, Elena, that it reminds me right now of when our church, it reminds me when our church first split and we all came together. Alton, you said it well, I think. We've been through a lot together. We've gone through selecting priests together, we've fought together, we've cared for each other together. And it reminds me of that time because at that time, people did what they did best and everybody just accepted it. We didn't challenge one another. We dropped a lot of our, I guess, fear, anxiety, differences of opinion, and we put a great effort in to come together. And that's not always a normal human response.
Oh, well.
Speak up, Sue.
Yeah.
Suzanne's gonna kill me.
I started to I suggest
She's always telling me I worry too much and I'm too negative.
I suggest you stand up.
Say something.
I can catch it from here.
Stand up.
I can catch it from here.
Whatever.
We can hear her.
Yeah, I'm getting sound.
You know, speak.
When I
Speak up.
Speak.
You can't hear me.
We can hear you. Just speak up.
Don't make me do this. No, I mean, yeah, I'm worried, and I know there are other people here who are worried, but I know, like, I wasn't with you guys in the very beginning, and I didn't go through the really rough stuff you guys went through. Just a lot more bumps on the road.
You came along.
But, you know, and I hadn't been involved with the church before, and then I get all involved, and I start getting, and then it all, the money, that thing. Oh, jeez, the person who took the money. But anyway, I mean, you all are wonderful, and I know it's gonna come through and I'll do it. And I love this group, and I'm sure it will, but it's frightening. You
Yes.
know,
Oh,
I saw
claim
so
it.
few people here today. I haven't been here for a month, and I thought, I expected.
Yeah.
Anyway, but it'll work. I know it'll work out.
So we can do some sorrowing, right? You know, we can say to ourselves, it's the second Sunday of Easter, and what do we call it?
Yeah.
No Sunday.
Awesome.
No
Low
Sunday.
Sunday.
Because, you know, people came for church and now they kind
They
of
were here last
take a
week.
Sunday off.
They were here last week.
But even when we do that, you know, even when we remind ourselves of that,
Low Sunday.
we can feel disappointment. Oh, there aren't as many people in church as there used to be. I not only feel sorrow over not seeing those bodies, I feel sorrow over not seeing those people and who we were together. Oops. And it's entirely fine to name that. In fact, it's important to name that. And part of what I want to reassure you of is what Jer showed you this morning and what Hugh has shown you in his presence as supply priests. The Episcopal Church has got you. The Holy Spirit has got you. We are the larger we together. And so it's okay to name those frightening feelings because we hold those feelings together in the larger context of the strength we have and share, right? And sometimes when we name them, the therapists among us will always say, if you name it, it will have less power over you, right? And when we name it, we recognize, oh, I feel that way too. There's somebody who understands me and how I feel better, right? Also, it can point us to what you want as a congregation and what's important as a congregation. One of the things that Elena blessed me with in our Zoom consultation, like week before last, I think it was she said, we really feel we need a spiritual guide right now. Because as we come back together and as we're in relationship with one another, we're having to think about this issue or that issue or this thing over here. And we need not only somebody to help us shape programs around those things, but we need spiritual counsel around those things. And hearing that made Canon Abbott and I think about this new thing we've developed, because you're not alone as a congregation that doesn't currently have a clergy person. You have had a priest in charge before, I think, correct? Yes. And you've had a rector before. Normally in this stage of the process, in a traditional process, we'd say, St. Margaret's, you need an interim rector. Do 12 to 18 months of self-study, but wait a minute, we've already started our self-study. Maybe you've even completed your self-study. Maybe you want to update your self-study a little bit, but hey, we've already started that. So instead, we'd like to recommend that you think about a priest in charge with special features. The special features are exactly those skills that we work on in interim ministry, helping congregations get clear about who we are and what we're called to do in the world,
Amen.
helping us get clear about what might still be lingering issues that we're uncomfortable with, that we need some kind of process of reconciliation or conflict resolution around. What do we need to think about in terms of, what do we want to think about in terms of a new beginning? Hello, friends. So the interim rectors are trained to help congregations with those processes. But we'd really like you to be able to have a priest in charge more immediately, quicker than waiting for a rector. But we also want to bring you the interim rector skills. The thing that you get with a priest in charge with special features with these interim skills is that at the end of a 3-year period of the priest in charge, if that person and you find you walk well together, then you can always convert that into a rector position. Or if 18 months, 12 months into your priest in charge with special features, if at that 12 or 18 month period you decide you are really good helping us with the interim stuff, but I don't think we're good for walking together long term, then you have not disbanded your discernment committee. The discernment committee has been working with the priest in charge all along at that self-study stuff and the updating and the resolution stuff. And so then the discernment committee, while the priest in charge is still there, starts the process of building the community ministry portfolio and doing a rector search. So you've got the priest in place and you're preparing for your next priest. John Richard.
I just am absolutely loving what you're saying, and I'm thinking to myself, out of all the priests that I've experienced here, the one that I absolutely loved the most was Mother Margaret, who was an interim rector, and I would have loved her to have stayed on as a priest. So the thought of having that skill in a priest that in charge is just an amazing thought.
I really appreciate that you see the goodness of us trying to be flexible about what a priest in charge can be, but bringing the skills of the interim rector into that slot. Yeah, that's exactly what we are conceptualizing. Yes.
I think too, what appeals to me is I feel almost like a child that's been put into a foster home, and then another foster home, and then another foster home.
Yeah.
And then I begin to think, well, what's wrong with me?
Thank you for naming that. Yes, when you have a priest go, a priest go, a priest go, you can start to think, oh, is it me?
There's something wrong.
And the answer is no, it's not you. There may be things that you want to identify that are very important in your next priest. And institutionally, as the church, I'm looking at it as it is possible that some of your former priests really needed skills that they weren't told they need to have because they didn't have that awareness. They didn't realize that we were at this time. I can tell you as a person who was a rector during COVID, nobody prepared me for that. That was just crazy, right? And so I'm familiar with that feeling of, ooh, I'm having to meet a task that I haven't been prepared for. I think we can all be honest and say, yeah, we've had moments in life like that. And so knowing that in this moment, you will need a consistent, caring pastor who has skills, who can help you deal with this highly dynamic environment is good. The last thing I'll say before we go to Jill's question is, I have a working theory that actually all ministry is transitional ministry right now because of what's changing in culture and what's changing inside of the church, which is part of culture, right? Yeah. Jill, you had a question.
No, I didn't. I just was raising my hand in that whole thing of I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah.
So, no, I agree completely with that whole,
Great.
yeah,
That's
not a question.
great. Yeah. And before we go to Winnie, one of the things we learn in interim ministry training is how to sit easy in the saddle and adapt to circumstances. If you've ever ridden a horse, you know what that feels like, right? It's like, okay, I need to tell the horse I'm in charge, and I need to know where I'm going, but I gotta be able to move with the horse, right? And that's a different model than some of the training we get as priests, which is we come prepared to do these things. Winnie.
I feel like, we're in
there's a song that says, I can relate to music all the time. I've been in the storm too long. And I feel as though we have been in the storm so long, just when we think the storm is ending, another one comes up, and there's a hurricane, blah, 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 blah. My concern is we are losing parishioners. We have lost so many parishioners during COVID. I don't know the reasons, but we need to also think in terms, and children. I look out and I don't see children.
Right.
I mean, I know everybody's not as old as I am, but still, I look around and I think we need children. So we need to have some type of programs, and that's one of the things when we look for an interim to see if they can help us in growing a good children's program, because a lot of people are turned off by the fact that we don't have something for children.
So,
Can you repeat that? I'm seeing people back there with their.
yes, that's very good. So Winnie was talking about two things. Let me see if I can state this correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, Winnie. One was, we've been in the storm a long time, and the storms just keep coming. And I want to name that as fatigue. There might be other things associated with that too, but fatigue. And that's a very common feeling in churches. I almost want to say it's universal. John Richard?
One of the things, in response to Winnie's comment, is one of the things that I feel is that we've been so hyper-focused on finances, building, and even membership. And we need, I feel like faith and the Word and building a Christ-centered approach comes first, and we need to get back to that so that we can actually build these other things.
So you've been doing some good and important work with getting people safely through COVID and taking care of your buildings and the other things that John Richard named. And those were necessary in their time. And now I hear your invitation for everybody to get focused, for the church to get focused around the Word, the sacraments, the formation, the steady path that comes when we know that we are God's beloved and that God has a path for us in life.
Amen.
And that steadies us through the storms of life. That's something that you have to offer children or families who are hoping to have children. And one of the things that will be really cool for you to explore with your new priest in charge person is that starting point of, we need to have children. I love the way you named that. Now let's explore that further. Not in this session, but your priest in charge will explore this with you further. Let's pay attention to that. We need to have children. Why? Why is that important to us? Well, because there are kids who need to know they're loved unconditionally. There are kids out there who feel like they are nothing because they think that in order to be Christian, they can't be themselves because they're transgender or LGBT in some way, right? No, we can offer them the Christian identity of being God's beloved, however and whoever you are. Wow, that's something you have to offer. We need children. Or it can be, we need children because we all know that when we're around people of other ages, that oxytocin gets released in our brain, that brain chemical that gives us joy and contact with other people. We need children for that reason. We need children, why else? Well, because if we don't have children, then, where does the church go after we die? Right? Now, sometimes our heads go straight to that third one. But did you note 1 and 2? Right? The church has a lot to give to people who are hoping to have families, or for families who feel like they don't fit in culture somehow. Right? So, you see, just from a brief exploration of that feeling, the possibilities that opened up. Do you feel it? Yeah. Good. So I would encourage you to think in terms of if your vestry decides it's appropriate to have a priest in charge who's got the interim training, say more about that in just a sec, that you will create this sort of safe space where you can name the kinds of things that we've been naming this afternoon and take it further into things you want to do, things you want to explore, or things that you want to understand better, and maybe you put it to rest. You say, yeah, we've explored that, we're done with that. Now we move on. Any questions thus far? Yes.
Got a question. Does the bulletin or other communications go to all of the former members who have not come back so that they know what's going on? And number two, it might sound very gross, but I don't care. Advertising in the paper. There are a lot of churches that do that, but that's one way to get people to see.
Sure.
Whether they show up or not, it's a different story.
So,
But I'd like to know about the communication to the former members.
good, so I'll just name them. Number one was, what is our communication to our membership, even those people who are not currently here, and maybe a vestry person can address that. And the second was that good word about advertising, letting people know that you're here, and how might that get done? Maybe it's a newspaper, maybe it's social media, maybe it's neighborhood associations. That's something that you can certainly work on. Does anybody from vestry want to address how we reach? Yes, Elena.
Yeah, I can tell you that we have assigned almost everybody in the congregation that we know are still members of St. Margaret's a shepherd. And that we're making calls to our sheep to check and see how they're doing, to see if, what's preventing them from maybe coming to church. Is there anything that we can do to remove the barriers? We're also making sure that they know that they're loved. And if there's any prayer requests that they have, that we certainly would want to keep them in our prayers over a month's period of time. So that has started in the last month. In addition to that, I got to thank Jill. She's been working tirelessly to bring up our Facebook page.
No, stop.
Okay,
Don't do that.
all right,
Okay, so communications-wise, for your question as to who it's going out to,
yeah.
it comes out from Tara. If people have said, no, I don't want to receive that anymore, she takes it off. But it doesn't necessarily mean she's going back through previous. So for whatever the list was, going out, it's going out to them. If they say, no, we do not want this anymore, she takes them off of that. But as to who that is, it's not like I have a specific information for that. And no, Facebook, I'm not on Facebook yet. Communications, we're working on it slowly, and I need more information about stuff because I don't have a social media presence, and I'm not necessarily getting one, no offense for the church, because it's not what I do. So I'm finding people to do that. Would you like to help? You let me know.
Yes.
Hi, I was just going to say, in listening to everything, and I know there are a number of people here that have been through, and they've been with St. Margaret's much longer than I, but our ups and downs, our hills and our bumps in life, we have a strong core, our faith, our love of each other. There is a St. Margaret's, which is what I appreciate about the group. And I think we're going to, you kind of learn hard lessons as you go along, what works, what doesn't, what you really believe is going to work, and it's a failure for whatever reason. That's when we need to hold fast to the core, if you will.
Yes.
And recognize that it's going to take everybody being them to make us go forward better. We have a leader group, but individuals can do things on their own, if you will. And so we've got to hold on to the core of our faith, love of St. Margaret's, and bite off little pieces, if you will, with the focus of where we're trying to get to. We don't want to lose track of where we're trying to get, but recognize we might have to take small bites along the way.
So there's wisdom right there, right? Let me ask you, how many disciples did Jesus have?
Well,
12. And lots of crowds around, right? But he had a core of 12. And how many people do you see in this room? More than 12. So you're already ahead of Jesus. There you go. But going off of your good wisdom there, I will refer to this little car here. As you can see, I can't drive. This is supposed to be a car, y'all.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. See the wheels? There are wheels. Do you not see those wheels?
Oh, I see the wheels.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. No, it's not a gravestone. It's a car. It's a car.
It looks like Rusty and Peter.
I saw the picture.
Moving right along. So this is a car, and it's a 4-seater car, and vision is in the driver's seat. In the church, you always want the vision to be in the driver's seat. But equally important are the relationships. Okay, and this is actually written in your packet, so you don't actually have to write it down unless you learn that way. So, vision is in the driver's seat, behind the wheel. It's going to steer the car. But the relationships are equally essential, out in front. And you've referred to those a lot in our time together. And that's an important and right focus. Programs, what we do and how we do it, needs to be in support of the relationships. Sometimes churches kind of get that backwards and put the programs in the front of a car. But it's really the relationships that should be in the front, right? So when you talk about shepherds, have their assigned people and they're following up with the people, I see you doing a relationship focused activity, very important. And then management, how we operate, what are our policies and procedures, are in support of programs and support the vision. This is not my work. This is a standard work that's used in church transition management, but I thought it might be helpful for you today, and it's turning out in our conversation to prove true. So if you can kind of keep this orientation, it might help for you to continue to work that model. John Richard.
yeah, in response to, well, Winnie and Dave, we have youth still in the church. We do. They just, I'll tell you right now, what's occurred is that everyone's gotten very comfortable with COVID. I mean, they don't like COVID, but it's become expected that they can stay at home. They're not used to returning back on a Sunday to go to church service. But when we have an event, an activity, such as the agape meal or our little Mardi Gras moment, Pancake Shrove Tuesday, we found our youth showed up with their parents. And they were running around and having fun. So we are, yes, the vestry are going out and trying to reach out to the individuals. Some of our members haven't left. They're just staying home.
The other thing that's occurring in congregations, I want to second what John Richard said. We are seeing that in multiple congregations. Youth and children will come to specific activities, but they're not coming on Sunday morning for a whole host of reasons. One of them is that they don't want to miss school because they've been exposed to COVID at church. And so parents are still kind of in that awful place of having to pick between, do I let my kids go to church or do I let my kids go to school? As the vaccination rate improves in the school-age children, that's beginning to change. But now we've got the behavior that you were talking about. And who, anybody ever try to lose weight? Right? How long does it take to change behavior? At least 30 days, right? So it's going to take some time. Wonderful news to hear that the youth and children are still here. Yeah, good. Okay, so let me give you some more information about the priest in charge with special features. Because you might be saying, well, didn't we just do priest in charge? Yes, you did. But this is the difference. priest in charge with special features is part of this pilot program that Bishop Susan has approved us to do as a pilot, see how it goes, make improvements as we operate the program. The key features are three actually. The priest who comes to you will have been trained in interim ministry skills. Not all clergy have that skill set. It's like being a medical doctor and then going for an additional certification in a specific specialty. So that's number one. Number two that makes it different from a typical priest in charge is that the person will be required monthly to receive professional coaching from a consultant whose specialty is transition and change in the church and interim ministry.
Love it.
So, when something comes up in the parish and the priest says, I wasn't trained for this, what do I do? They bring it to their monthly coaching session. The third thing that makes this different from a typical priest in charge is that that priest participates in a cohort of other priests monthly who are in similar positions. We have about 6 congregations that, like you, fit the qualifications of this program. So this cohort meets monthly as clergy over Zoom and does case studies so that they can learn from one another and get ideas and support from one another, and they know they're not alone when they come up against the tough stuff. So 3 rather remarkable features that are standard to learning and building healthy people and organizations, but we've just brought them to this particular situation. Any questions about that?
Sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hopeful.
I'm hearing wonderful, hopeful. Vestry, what more do you need to know from this body gathered?
Well, I guess I'd like to know that, that the people here have time to think about it, because everyone processes information a little bit differently. That you contact your shepherd and let us know what your thoughts are. If you don't want to share them today, that's fine, but please share them with the vestry person that you're working with so that we can make a decision to move forward and get our priest in charge. You need time to think this through. And I want to give you that time to do that. So in the next week or so, please contact your shepherd. Everyone is my sheep,
You don't know who
my number.
Here's the problem. You don't know who your shepherds are unless they've gotten in touch with you.
Right. So we'll make sure that gets taken care of.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. If you haven't heard from
The
your
shepherds are still
yet,
working on it.
And
we
that's-
just
no.
started this process. So, we'll ask those shepherds to get in touch with you if you haven't heard from them or you haven't received an email. But if not, call any of the other vestry members. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
So shepherds will get in touch with each of their sheep. If you as a sheep haven't been contacted, you can talk to a vestry member, but this is being rolled out right now, so maybe it might take a few weeks to get under steam. So let's see, we're the end of April now. So say if by mid-May you haven't heard from a shepherd, it would be very reasonable to contact a vestry person, is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Yes.
I'd like clarification about what's the issue? In other words, are we deciding between, I gotta look at the front of this, between an interim rector going that direction or going with a priest in charge with special
It's a
ability?
good question.
I mean, is that what the question is?
Well, the vestry has the question before them of would they like to participate, would they like St. Margaret's to participate in this special priest in charge program that I just outlined. What's the alternative? The alternative is doing the traditional interim rector model, which would be 12 to 18 months with an interim rector, and at the same time, the discernment committee is starting the search process for the new rector. that has some sense of delay to it, which may not feel good given your circumstances. The other problem with it is we do not have enough interim rectors trained right now. There's a shortage for a lot of different reasons. We sort of had the perfect storm happen in the Episcopal Church, and it's not just our diocese that's short of interim rectors. So instead of boring you with an hour-long talk of why that is, I will just say it is. And so part of my heart is for you and other congregations, I would rather see you have a caring and consistent pastor sooner rather than later. And if we can secure that through the priest in charge route and assure ourselves that you are getting a properly trained and supported clergy person, then it sounded kind of good. But yeah, interim rector would be the alternative. Yep. Yes, Wally.
So if you want my vote,
Yes.
do not do interim rector. Go with the priest in charge. I personally was on the search committee that selected Neil Brown. So it kind of burned me on that process. And the thing that I learned is no matter what you know, at the end when you go through this search, you have a small window of information that may or may not give you a true feeling. The recent experience with Reverend Fanny as priest in charge was that she came with a certain set of expectations, and her expectations were not met. Our expectations, at least in my view, were not met by her. And to me, so I would like that option of, okay, let's try it for a year, see how it goes, because priests are human beings and in some way limited. And it's the strengths that need to fit us, not the limitations. And, we talked about kids, we talked about this. This, frankly, is a retired community if you look around. Not me, I should be, but
I'm encouraging him to continue from an emotional perspective.
So,
The new handbag.
but I mean, as you said before, we have a limited lifespan in this room, and we want this to continue because there are good things here. There are things that we need to make, and we need to find a priest who can, it's hard for me because I come to church for two reasons: to be fed by the body and blood, and to be fed by the word. The rest of it is all ancillary. It's extra. It's nice if it fits me, but it's not the core reasoning. So we need to fit a priest that not only fits Wally, but fits Alton and fits Greg and fits Dan, fits Mario and fits Renell, and everybody else, not just in a room, but everybody else who still has feelings about St. Margaret and wants to come back.
Thank you.
And that's the difficult part. We're worried about everything, as everybody is, but it begins with a priest who meets the needs of us. And a priest in charge, special qualifications or not, seems to me to be the way to go. I thought that's where you were going with your statement, so you have one vote.
Go, Wally.
And Wally's comment gives me the opportunity to provide a clarification, which is really important, and it's not contradicting what you said. This priest in charge is like all priests in charge. It is a 3-year term that after 12 or 18 months and the mutual ministry review is conducted, then you might decide to walk longer. But it is that 3-year term, which can feel not great if you're halfway through and things aren't going wonderfully well. Here's, again, the potential difference with this particular kind of priest in charge. The person comes with those interim ministry skills. So they will have some facility in being able to acknowledge, I know I'm not meeting your expectations with this. And so let's make sure it gets into the community ministry portfolio, because I can see it's really important. I don't have it. So, bear with me for another 12 months while we continue to do this interim ministry work that'll strengthen you for the person who does have those skills. And they'll be able to have that kind of conversation. Do you see what I'm saying about that? Yeah.
It's a commitment for 3 years.
It's a commitment for 3 years.
I
Which
remember
gives us some continuity.
It gives you continuity. The other thing it does, and it was actually a layperson in the church who pointed this out to me. I was speaking with another church's vestry, and he said, so let me get this straight. So the clergy person might actually want to invest in this special training and the skills because they would have a sense of stability for 3 years. Like, yeah. I think, frankly, that's one of the reasons why we don't have more interim rectors, because if everybody's living on a 12 to 18 month time cycle, golly, that's really hard on families.
When I listened to Janet Abbott,
Yeah.
one of the things that I heard in that, in her presentation was when we did our, discernment, that's a snapshot in a period of time. That's all you get. And that it's important to continue to reassess the changes and, everywhere where you are today is not where you were yesterday. And in that, I believe when you have that type of a person, you're able to move and to adapt that and to be able to identify that and then to say. And then, even though if those needs that we have don't meet, they don't fit, then that can be built into the next one, but you're continually getting that reevaluation of who we are, where we are, and you don't necessarily have one picture frame in time of who this congregation is.
Very nicely said. It's a snapshot in time. It's like when you go to your doctor, the doctor looks at you now. They weigh you now. They take your blood pressure now. They don't refer back to your last visit and as if you should be in that place, right? And so similarly with church assessments. And I just think it's a wonderful opportunity for clergy to develop more facility and skills in always lovingly being connected with a congregation, but having this sort of assessment mindset in mind, not in terms of judging, but being able to clarify for the congregation, I am seeing this. Do you see this? What do you want to make of this? How do you want to grow from this? It's a lovely
I
skill
love your
set.
words, lovingly connected.
Shirley, just for clarification.
Yes.
Doctors do look back at 15
Some doctors out, you
Wait, they want you to go back.
Dr. Tucker
They would
did.
draw on that experience.
I used to go to church with my doctor, he just retired. And it was unfair, you'd see him in the office, then you'd get to him in church and he'd go, what do you? And it was always the finger there. It was
I
always,
see you had a couple. But lovingly connected was something to me that strikes a chord, that's not, I don't meet those needs, I don't want to deal with you, I don't, or, my door's open for only some people, but not for all people. And I like that, loving connection.
Well, super. See, that's another one of God's blessings that God has given today, right? If those are words that resonate with you, jot them down and make sure they're carried forward. Yes, John Richard.
As a vestry member and junior warden, I'm going to vote according to what all the congregation wants because that's what I support. As an individual, I'm going to tell you that with Mother Margaret, we had an interim that we would have loved to have had her stay.
Amen.
But her contract wouldn't allow her to stay because she was only here for the 12 to 18 months. As when Reverend Fanny was here, the one comment she made that I am well aware of because it was made to me as well as others was that she wasn't trained to handle conflict resolution. even small conflicts. It was overwhelming for her. Interims have that necessity, as I understand it. And so it amounts to me like by getting a priest in charge with the interim training, we get a priest who is trained in some of these same skills that Mother Margaret had that were beneficial for us.
I love it that y'all don't wither when I say conflict. You know, it's wonderful. It's wonderful because to be human is to encounter conflict,
Yes.
right? And
We've had conflict here for 20 years.
We want to know what to do without it.
so, to John Richard's point, yes, the person does come with a certain amount of training in identifying and caringly holding the congregation in conflict and not feeling like they've got to pull away from that. And they're going to get the coaching to say, and here are some further resources that this congregation will probably benefit from, right? Also, I'll just lift up for you too, I don't know if anybody's ever said this, there is actually training for lay people in conflict mediation and conflict resolution in the church. Lombard Peace Mennonite Institute offers it. And they travel out from time to time and they do Zoom trainings. If you go to the Lombard Mennonite Peace Institute website.
They're
I've
amazing.
taken the training in conflict management, like the hardcore training myself, and used it. And I'd like to think I was effective with it. But I was impressed that they offer that for lay people. And they'll even do trainings with congregations. And the beauty of that is it gives you a vocabulary and enables the congregation to be able to talk about, describe what they see and what's happening and how to move through it, but sharing the same language. It's just a thought. Okay, and I'm realizing we've gone on for a bit, and I'm okay, but you know I want to be respectful of your time boundaries. So, Madam Senior Warden, you tell me.
I think that, you know, how are people feeling at this moment with the information that you've received from Reverend Shirley? You know, where is Christ in this? Where is Christ leading us as a congregation as we move forward? So I think that if we all prayerfully consider what's been said and what's been presented to us, I think God will reveal the answer that we need in order for us to move forward. We have to put the fear aside. We've already had a lot of fear over the last couple of years with COVID, with the state of the national politics, and with people not being able to worship together like we've always had. You know, where we were in the pews and we had lots of activities. We're going to get back there. But I ask you to prayerfully consider what's been given to you today, and let us know what your wishes are for us to move forward. Personally, I love this idea. I think that as your senior warden, I think this is, it's kind of in great timing, God's great timing, that he brings us this information at this time with our congregation. So please consider it. Are there any other questions for Reverend
I just want to say, I second Wally. I think this is a wonderful way to move forward for us at this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think
we need
the stability. Yes, I really think we need the stability. Reverend Jer said today he's retiring next year.
Yes.
2023, he's on my list.
Jeanette?
I really liked him today.
Yes.
I just have a question.
Yes, question.
Was that a motion that Wally had, or are the shepherds going to poll? I mean, how are we going to ascertain the feeling of the congregation?
How would the feelings of the
Shepherds will poll.
congregation be ascertained? How do you want to handle that, Elena?
I think if you guys are okay, for the people that are here, I'd like to make a motion for us to accept the concept of going in with the priest in charge with special features, or do we want to table it until we make our shepherd calls?
I think we need to wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let everybody who may be watching this get the information, talk to others. You don't need to make a quick decision on this. I have sensed from you all that this program resonates with you, and there's a very positive feeling about it. So I will go back to Ken Abbott and say, I think we should be looking for a priest in charge with special features for St. Margaret's in case they decide to go that way, so that in 2 weeks when you call me, I'm just randomly picking that, you know, and say, this is what we want to do, then we're not saying, ooh, we don't have anybody, so.
Yeah, what is the timeline?
We have our next
Well,
vestry meeting.
thank you.
On the 15th of May? Are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
Is that Mother's Day?
No, Mother's Day is 8.
Okay, good. So we have our next vestry meeting on the 15th of May. So maybe if we have contacted
Right.
people by then and
We-
say-
What is the diocesan timeline for the
Oh.
need of this? How many, you know, are available? At what time point do you
Sure.
have?
Just like I'm talking to congregations, Canon Abbott is talking to clergy about their willingness to participate in this program. I'm doing some of those calls too. So we're getting that group together. This is like the incubator stage.
Okay.
So you haven't missed anything by waiting until May 15th for the vestry to make a decision. If vestry decides, we want to make a decision on this May 15th, and that's good because that gives 2 weeks for the congregation to think it through and have conversations,
Right.
ask me any clarifying questions.
Right.
You're not going to miss the train.
Okay.
And I will go ahead and send an article out for the weekly bulletin about what happened today and letting people know about the deadlines and to get in touch with their shepherd or a vestry member about what they would like us to see us do as we move forward.
And for the people at home, we'll also make sure that that the flyers from today are attached to the YouTube so that people can actually download the flyer, the PowerPoints that you handed out, look over this, listen to it, and then reach back out to their vestry members so that they can also be a part of this conversation.
That's wonderful. I love the way you're so caring toward each other and making sure that communication happens.
Just one other thing, we did have it was sort of a shepherd program, I think,
Oh, yeah.
before with the other
Yeah.
vestry.
Oh, yeah.
Where they were trying to keep in touch with people. And that's very difficult, I know, because the vestry's so busy, they got a million other things. I'm just saying there are probably some of us who, if you wanted to help reach some people or, you know, anything.
You want my
You
list?
could probably get some.
And Parker has
No.
volunteered.
I mean,
That would be
I
great.
think many of us have been calling and talking with other people who
Yeah, we
We-
used
to see.
call them when they
But
don't
if
see
you
them.
want
So there are other people other than vestry who are willing to be shepherds and make calls.
And we do have a list of people that has suddenly become available that we need to assign to people, so,
Good.
I don't
Yeah.
know what that means.
Thank you, Holy Spirit. It sounds like we're in a good resting place to be finished with our business today. Just checking with the vestry. Is that all right? Are we bringing this to close?
yeah.
Lovely. In that case, let us bless the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
May the power of God working in you continue to do that which God has set you to, glorifying His Son Jesus in the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah.